Being the golden child in the narcissistic family is not necessarily something that always stays consistent throughout time. And so I want to talk a little bit about what happens when you go from being a golden child to a scapegoat. Another thing that I want to cover today is what happens when different parents are appointing golden children and how this represents a power struggle within the family that had nothing to do with you. So basically, when I was growing up, I had some other siblings. One of my siblings, she was the scapegoat for pretty much the entirety of her elementary school years, and then at some point in middle school became the golden child appointed by my mother. She kind of maintained that, and with my dad, he kind of like cast her aside. He didn't really see her as somebody who was going to like fulfill his needs. And my dad, his main thing was it was like intelligence was the important thing. You couldn't be too much smarter than him, but he was a doctor, and that's what he kind of took pride in, was like book smarts essentially. And I had another sibling who was pretty smart, and throughout elementary school was my dad's main golden child. And then at some point around middle school, kind of fell out of favor and became a scapegoat. And then there was me. It's harder to tell when you were a golden child, when you were a scapegoat, when it's you and it's not like you looking at someone else necessarily. But essentially, towards the end of high school, if not, I don't know, maybe more of high school, but I know towards the end of high school, like 11th grade for sure, 12th grade, I was the golden child for my dad. And what happened was I got sent to college. He put me on the track. You had to do math or science. He told me I wouldn't be able to make money any other way. And like I said, he was a doctor, so he went down the STEM field. It was not what I was good at, or it wasn't what I was passionate about. I was always much more into like human behavior and, creative endeavors, but they put me into that path. So I did what I was told, and my parents were really pushing that I go to a UC school because that's the ones that have the most prestige, and my dad had gone to UCLA. Well, anyways, I did go to college, and I went to a UC. I didn't go to one of the top UCs. I went to one of the ones that was easier to get into. And during this time, a power struggle kind of initiated with my parents. I think once my mom saw that I was away from the house, it was really not meeting her needs. She likes to have people around all the time. She was a housewife, and here I was going off on my own. At some point, I was very dependent then, so that's why I struggled a lot in college that first year. I think a lot of first years do. But she set up a plan and brought me right back, and I ended up having to go to community college from the house. So here's like what actually was happening and how it benefited her. Whenever my mom took one of my dad's golden children, which happened with my sibling, like I mentioned before, and then that was like the practice so she could do it to me. It takes away the spotlight from any of the children, and it puts it all on her, so she gets all the attention and all the resources. So that was one reason why she did it. When my dad no longer had any golden children, it kept him more in line with her in terms of what direction things were going in. She got to tell the narrative of the house and have him fully back it up rather than argue against any of it. And she also was able to be the sole person who was assigning the roles in the house, essentially putting her above him at all times. And this is something when you have two narcissists as parents, they are competing for power. They are benefiting off of certain things with each other. It's not a loving relationship in the sense that they're there because they care about each other. They're there because they're getting something out of it. And my dad was getting something out of it too, but my mom was essentially kind of like, if you want this and you want to get the benefits that I have to offer you, I've got to be top dog and everybody else is beneath. And so her golden child, the one that she had appointed, was the one that she supported and ended up going to grad school eventually. And then me and the other one, we left as soon as we were done with college. I always thought my parents had a relationship that was pretty close and pretty good for people like them. But I think that putting one of us in the middle of conflict was one of the ways that they buffered it from each other. And I think that there was sometimes there's like these fractures in the relationship that you're not seeing between the parents, and having the conflict was a way for them to unify against a common enemy. And my mom was very useful for my dad in terms of like knowing how to penalize people, knowing how to maintain control, knowing how to keep the family image the way that it needed to look. Essentially, as soon as the golden child became a scapegoat, my dad kind of passed you off to the mom and
It's like, here, take this sacrifice and leave me alone.
And he has nothing to do with you anymore, except for like putting you down and criticizing you and stuff. My dad, once we were scapegoated, would kind of egg my mom on whenever he wanted to get somebody punished, or, would just kind of spy on your behavior and things like that, and she would kind of take over. So my point in all of it is to say that when you go from being a golden child to a scapegoat, it really has nothing to do with you, especially if there's that power struggle between the parents. She was identifying that me and my sibling at one point, we were both going down the paths of being his golden children. And if we did, that kind of was a loss for her, because she's not being able to see herself reflected in us. She's seeing him reflected in us. And those types of moms can also have like serious jealousy between themselves and their daughters. They feel in competition. They can be in competition for